So today we're going to talk about the Calhoun burial site and what's been going on out there. So who were the Calhouns and what was there in 1864?
Oh, well, Dr. William Calhoun and his wife, Jane Stewart Orr Calhoun, were married in 1837 in South Carolina. And in 1845, they moved to Mississippi. And they built one of the largest homes in the area. In fact, it rivaled Lochinvar over in Pontotoc. They had a good bit of money. They imported a lot of their furnishings and even the landscaping from Great Britain. Very nice house. Of course, they were very politically connected pre-war. Dr. Calhoun was the nephew of Vice President John C. Calhoun, and Jane Stewart Orr was the sister of John Lawrence Orr, who was the Speaker of the House prior to the Civil War, and her other brother, Jehu Amaziah Orr, was the colonel commanding the 31st Mississippi. And then she had a third brother who was a physician in the area.
How far away was the fighting at the Battle of Tupelo, Harrisburg from the Calhoun house site?
Well, the Calhoun home is at Calhoun Crossroads, and that is the intersection of the Camargo Road and the Pontotoc-Verona Road. From the engagements on July 13th with the running battle from Pontotoc to Harrisburg, it was approximately 4 miles to the south. If you go directly north from the home, you went to Camargo Crossroads. And then on July 14th, it was approximately 5 miles southwest of the center of the Confederate line.
So what happened at the Calhoun's place during the battle and after the battle?
The Calhoun home was the primary Confederate hospital during the battle. There were several secondary hospitals, but this was the primary one. And this is where Forrest's surgeons set up and many of the regimental surgeons set up. What happened was on July 13th, casualties started coming in. Well, the Confederate leadership didn't know that Dr. Calhoun was on the verge of a nervous breakdown that day. And he went to his back bedroom, threw himself on the bed and said, "Jane, I can't do it." And Jane replied, "Get up, doctor, this is our day." And he did rally to the occasion. They treated probably over 500 casualties there. They had doctors coming throughout the area to support the Confederate surgeons. They took the doors off the hinges there in the house, took them outside, set them up sawhorses to make surgery tables. It was just a large-scale operation there. With all around the house, you had Confederate wounded outside recovering in the elements. And across the road, they started burying the dead.
All right, so what evidence do we have that lets us know about this possible large burial of soldiers from the battle out there?
What we keyed in on was the diary of Private Hancock of the 2nd Tennessee, who was an eyewitness to events, along with the casualty reports and then post-war newspaper articles and magazine articles writing about it up until the house burned in circa 1958. There were, because it was such a large, beautiful home, so much was written about that house.
To the best of your knowledge, who were some of the men that died and were buried there?
Well, that's the problem. With so many casualties there, it is hard to determine who the predominant burials were. We know a lot probably came from Bell's brigade. And the body that we had, the headstone for that we have out there, belonged to a Sergeant Drake, Dodd Drake. He was from Tennessee. He was from a well-known family. His father was a physician. He was well-educated. And we know from the inscription on his headstone, which is the only one we've been able to find, is that he died on July 14th, which is in the main battle, which that corresponds with the casualties from the main battle also being brought there. Now, we hope to locate the other missing 12 headstones that we believe that were removed when the field started being used for agricultural purposes. And we hope to find those so we can get those names of the other soldiers that remain there.
What else do you hope to learn from this multi-pronged investigation that's going on?
Our main goal in here is to find the location of the graves, preserve them, mark them, and eventually develop an interpretive site there to explain what happened at the Calhoun home and the general events of the battle.
So tell us a little bit about the mix of, I don't know, traditional technology as far as GPR and the little unorthodox as far as a dowser that was used, that's being utilized during this process.
You got to remember, this project started 3 years ago, and we had COVID hit. We had 2 archaeology departments from local universities commit to assist us with this project. They were going to bring out GPR, et cetera, to help us with the search. But that was at the same time period that Ole Miss decided to move their Confederate monument, and Mississippi decided to change their state flag. So anything Confederate related during that period became a pariah.
Right.
And the academic institutions just had to back off
Sure.
for optics for a while. Because we didn't have any other options to go to at that point, we turned to Wayne Lee, one of our members. He is an experienced dowser who has found many graves in his area back in North Carolina. And so he has a lot of research in this, experience in this. And you have to remember, here in the lower South, dowsing has a time-honored tradition for us. If you're my generation and older, you grew up knowing dowsers. You had dowsers come out to your farm to help you find wells, etc. So we went with that. It was our best option we had at the time. We identified possible locations for the trenches. Luckily, we had a civil engineer come out. He helped us to mark everything. We swept that area then with metal detectors to try to get hits, which we did. Now, the next step was naturally to try to obtain a GPR survey. Now, we realized we have to have that to meet the academic standards. And so we got quotes, and it was going to cost us $15,000 to survey that field. And we were trying to raise funds for that. And luckily, Ken Rogers, another one of our members, he reached out to History Seekers, and Heath Jones was History Seekers, volunteered his services to come over and do a GPR survey for us. And we did our first initial GPR survey this past weekend. And I'd like to, just go ahead and brag that we had 17 anomalies that are consistent with what you see with graves that all fell in the area that Wayne Lee, our dowser, had laid out.
That was the first time that I've ever seen dowsing. Obviously, I have some skepticism, but Wayne Lee was a really nice, believable man.
Yes.
And now it's looking like we have the hard evidence to back up what he saw. So
yeah, and History Seekers will be coming back in a few months when the ground conditions are better, when it's not quite as wet as it has been here in the early part of the year, and we can get a better read when it's not quite as saturated, hopefully pick up even more graves.
Thank you for talking to us today, and we can't wait to hear more about what this project unveils and how it proceeds.
Well, thank you for having me.